She only wanted one night of peace, one night to celebrate the victory she'd fought so hard to earn. But the moment she walked into that glittering rooftop bar, the air shifted. The stares, the whispers. And then him, the world-famous singer with a golden voice and a heart darker than his designer shades. He mocked her, humiliated her in front of everyone. The laughter cut through the music like glass, until she turned around. And the tattoo on her back silenced the entire room. Because that tattoo carried a name, the one he thought he'd buried forever. Nia Daniels had spent her whole life proving she belonged in rooms that weren't built for her. At 27, she had just become one of the youngest creative directors in Atlanta, a title she'd earned through relentless effort, sleepless nights, and a fire that refused to die. In an industry that often smiled to her face but questioned her behind her back, she was proof that brilliance could break through barriers. That night, her colleagues insisted she celebrate. A sleek rooftop bar overlooking the city skyline. Crystal glasses, low jazz, the scent of money in the air. Nia arrived in an emerald green dress that shimmered under the lights, her natural curls pinned elegantly, her presence confident yet calm. Heads turned as she walked in, some admiring, others sizing her up. She felt the glances, the unspoken thoughts. Who's she with? Does she even belong here? But she pushed it aside. Tonight was about joy, not judgment. The mood shifted when a crowd flooded through the doors, cameras flashing, bodyguards moving in sync. At the center of it all was Lance Monroe, the platinum-selling R&B star whose face was everywhere. Billboards, playlists, scandals. The kind of man who made fame look effortless. Everyone stared. Everyone except Nia. She didn't chase fame. She built her own success. But destiny, cruel and deliberate, was already setting the stage for what came next. An hour later, as Nia laughed quietly with a coworker at the bar, Lance noticed her. To him, she was just another pretty face, until his ego demanded an audience. He strutted toward her, charm oozing like honey. The crowd parted. His entourage watched. This was familiar territory. He leaned close. "Let me buy you a drink," he said, flashing that practiced smile. Nia smiled politely, shaking her head. "No, thank you." The rejection, soft, graceful, hit him harder than he expected. His charm cracked. The crowd watched as his pride twisted into something uglier. "Too good for a drink from me?" he said, voice raised, the room starting to listen. Nia's hand tightened around her glass. She'd faced worse. She turned away, refusing to give him the scene he wanted. That quiet strength, that refusal to play along, bruised him deeper than any insult could. So he decided to humiliate her. He called the bartender, tossed his platinum card, and said loudly, "You know the type. Women who only come where the money is." The laughter that followed was sharp and awkward, echoing against the marble bar. Someone recorded, someone whispered. And for a second, Nia felt that familiar sting, the weight of every microaggression, every silent dismissal she'd ever endured. But she didn't crumble. She straightened her shoulders, took a slow breath, and said softly, "Excuse me." Then she turned and walked toward the dance floor, her back to him. The lights hit her skin, catching the ink across her shoulder blades. A delicate tattoo, one name written in cursive, Elijah Monroe. Lance's smirk vanished. His grip on the glass loosened. The world around him fell quiet. That name. That one name was the ghost he'd spent 12 years trying to outrun. Elijah, his younger brother. The brother who vanished in a racially charged tragedy. The boy whose death had shattered Lance before fame rebuilt him, and whose girlfriend had disappeared after the funeral. Her name was Nia, and now, standing before him, confident, unbroken, radiant, was the same woman he'd once known through grief. The crowd sensed something shift. Cameras stopped moving. Nia turned back, noticing his expression, pale, trembling. Recognition flashed between them, heavy and unspoken. "Nia?" he whispered, voice cracking under the weight of guilt. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just stared back, Calm, steady, strong. She remembered everything. The sirens, the protests, the headlines that painted Elijah as the villain instead of the victim. And she remembered Lance's silence, how his brother's death became a story he stopped telling once fame called his name. Now, here he was, the same man who mocked her minutes ago, standing frozen before the memory he betrayed. Lance tried to speak, but no words came. The cameras that once adored him now caught every flicker of shame. The same crowd that laughed moments ago now watched in pin-drop silence. Naya took a step closer and said in a voice soft enough to break hearts, "You forgot him." "I never did." Then she turned and walked away. The silence that followed was deafening. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to move. And in that moment, the superstar became small, and the woman he tried to humiliate became untouchable. The video spread online like wildfire. Within hours, millions watched it. The mighty singer, speechless before a woman his fame had once crushed. Headlines exploded. Old articles about Elijah resurfaced. The world remembered what Lance had tried to bury. Days later, Lance released a polished public apology, carefully written, rehearsed, forgettable. But it wasn't enough, because people saw the truth behind Nia's silence. Her grace had said everything words never could. Weeks later, Nia visited Elijah's grave. The tattoo shimmered beneath the sunlight as she placed a white lily by his name. She whispered, "They finally know." The world moved on, but not the same way. People started to talk about forgotten victims, buried stories, and the cost of staying silent. Lance disappeared from the spotlight. Some said he entered therapy. Others said he began funding racial justice groups. Maybe guilt finally found him, but Nia didn't need to follow his story. She had already reclaimed hers, because sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of a woman who refuses to bow to cruelty. The next time someone laughs at another's pain for entertainment, maybe they'll remember her. Maybe they'll remember Nia Daniels, the woman who turned humiliation into history. Because behind every act of cruelty lies a story. And some names, no matter how deep you bury them, refuse to die.